Hey guys, you probably won't survive this one without shaking your head so hard your neck gets sore. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is right now, because timing really does change the way a story feels. Malcolm's life is built on rhythm. Morning coffee satchel over the shoulder boots on familiar sidewalks. He's been the Lakewood community mail carrier for 3 years. He knows which gates stick, which dogs bark but never bite, and which front porches are more likely to offer him a cold bottle of water on sweltering days. He used to be a real estate agent, but traded glass offices and commission checks for the kind of peace that comes from delivering small packages and seeing how people live when they're not trying to sell anything. That calm cracks 6 months ago when Christine Collins moves into the big house on Maple Street. 40-something perfectly styled hair, immaculate white SUV, and a wardrobe that suggests she's permanently on her way to a boardroom. She joins the HOA, and within 2 months has a seat on the board, a notebook of compliance issues, and a smile sharp enough to slice a postage stamp in half. Her remarks aren't outright rude, but they carry that "you're not quite my kind of people" undertone. Historians still argue whether that's more exhausting than just being yelled at. When Mr. Harrison decides to sell Lot 23, the only property with the original Lake Gate key, Malcolm jumps. Years of frugal living and an old Honda payoff, he closes the deal, dreams of fishing before his route, maybe hosting community cleanup days. But the morning after he gets his key, he finds a brand new 6-foot steel fence across the lake path. Christine appears all pressed blouse and smugness, warning him not to trespass. 10 minutes later, 2 patrol cars roll in. The officers, both longtime recipients of Malcolm's mail, inspect his deed and note the fence might be the actual legal problem. Christine's face tightens. That's the thing about people who rely on intimidation. When their first swing misses, they start looking for sharper weapons. Days later, a formal complaint about Malcolm's unprofessional conduct lands on his supervisor's desk, followed by an HOA-wide safety notice painting him as a threat. But here's the fringe tidbit intended to isolate him. It backfires spectacularly. Neighbors flood the thread with stories of Malcolm shoveling walks, finding lost pets, and braving ice storms to deliver medicine. The tide, it seems, is shifting. Christine doesn't take public embarrassment well. 2 days after the HOA email debacle, Malcolm finds a thick envelope from a law firm he's never heard of, Hartwell & Associates, the kind of place with rent higher than his yearly grocery bill. Inside, a letter loaded with legal jargon about trespassing, easement violations, and fines big enough to make his old Honda weep. The tone is clear. Don't think just panic. Marcus, his older brother, has been practicing environmental and property law in D.C. for 15 years. Malcolm reads him the letter over the phone, and Marcus actually chuckles. Half of this is meaningless bluster. The other half is so vague it wouldn't survive a sneeze in court. It's a reminder that legal intimidation is often like those medieval maps, fancy borders, scary dragons, but mostly blank space. Marcus warns him to document everything and avoid Christine's provocations. Yet watching her prowl the lake path with surveyors, photographers, and that calculated loud voice, Malcolm starts thinking, if she's building a case, maybe he should too. That's when he knocks on Eleanor Reeves's door. Eleanor's 90, Lakewood's unofficial historian, and sharper than any HOA meeting gavel. She leads him into a basement archive that smells of dust and certainty. Among the boxes, Eleanor pulls a 1991 Lake Conservation Agreement, a document her late husband helped draft. It outlines not just access rights for Lot 23, but a perpetual conservation easement, public access, guaranteed development, strictly limited. And here's the quirky part. Original copies are on paper so thick it could double as body armor. According to Eleanor, these rights can't be revoked by any HOA. Malcolm spends days buried in the documents, the legal language swimming like alphabet soup. Doubt creeps in. Historians still argue whether self-doubt is an act of humility or just fear in nicer clothes. That's when Eleanor calls with a lifeline Lena Brooks, a zoning expert with a knack for turning municipal code into bedtime reading. Over coffee, Lena flips through the papers like she's been waiting her whole life for this puzzle. 3 days later, she calls Malcolm, "Sit down. You're not just allowed to access that lake, you're obligated to protect it. The HOA has zero authority here, and that fence, it's a federal environmental violation." For the first time in weeks, Malcolm feels the ground under his feet again. This isn't a petty squabble, it's Christine violating the very laws meant to protect the lake. The next move, bring it all into the light with the whole neighborhood watching. Saturday afternoon, the weather plays nice, clear sky, a hint of breeze, perfect for Malcolm's brief history of Lakewood gathering. He set up a table by the lake with neatly organized copies of the conservation documents. Marcus is there in his lawyer's navy suit, Lena with her research binder, and even a county environmental officer standing quietly at the back. It's a small army in cardigans and clipboards. Right on cue, Christine arrives in a white power suit, scanning the crowd like a general inspecting troops. Before Malcolm can speak, she projects her voice. "Hope everyone appreciates Malcolm hosting events on property he's about to lose. It's the HOA equivalent of trying to spike the ball before the whistle." Malcolm keeps his tone calm, almost conversational, as he thanks everyone for coming and starts outlining the lake's legal history. Christine tries a jab about his lack of property law credentials. He gestures to Marcus, Lena, and the county rep. Suddenly, her smirk tightens. The HOA board members shift uncomfortably, one dabbing sweat from his collar. Kids stop playing, neighbors lean in. Marcus lays it out first. This isn't an HOA regulation issue, this is a 1991 federal conservation easement. It supersedes any local rules. Lena steps up with her bombshell. Christine has been receiving annual notices about these protections for 20 years. Her full name, Christine Harrison Collins, lands like a dropped anchor. Gasps ripple through the crowd. The county rep seals it. The fence is a federal violation. Fines total $12,000 for the HOA, $21,000 for Christine personally. The reaction is instant. One longtime neighbor speaks for the rest. "Your grandfather protected this land for everyone." "How could you do this?" Christine's reply. "It was mine. He said it was mine." Sounds small, almost childlike, against the quiet disapproval. Historians still argue whether silence or applause hits harder in moments like this, but here the hush feels like judgment, carved in stone. 2 weeks later, the fence is gone, replaced by a wooden sign, "Harrison Conservation Area protected by legacy." Malcolm keeps the gate key, opens it for the neighborhood, and watches as Christine's moving truck leaves without a single wave. The fines are paid, the HOA's emergency fund dented, but the lake is safe. The rhythm of the lake returns slowly like a song you thought you'd forgotten. Morning light paints the water gold, the path open again for joggers, kids with fishing poles, and quiet wanderers. Malcolm still delivers his route, nodding to the same porches, still carrying envelopes and small packages, but now he also carries the weight and the privilege of guardianship. The sign at the gate feels less like a marker and more like a promise. Sometimes he lingers there listening to the wind in the reeds, thinking about how close it came to being closed off forever. He's learned that legacies aren't just inherited, they're defended, often against people who believe control is the same thing as care. Christine's name comes up less with each passing week. When it does, it's in lowered voices, as if the neighborhood has collectively decided she's a cautionary tale, not a headline. The fine stung, but what really stayed was the clarity. Power without principle eventually collapses under its own weight. In the softened pace of late afternoons, Malcolm imagines Mr. Harrison walk in this path, young Christine laughing by the water, the choice he made decades ago to protect this place. It's a reminder that the truest ownership isn't about deeds or fences, but about stewardship, showing up, standing guard, and making sure the gates stay open. If there's a whisper in this story, it's this: when someone tries to fence you out, it might be because they know you already belong, and belonging once claimed is hard to take away.